Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching the Question Hour show from the Parliament House complex with your host Kriti Mishra and Rajat Kane. And our show focuses on all the important questions asked by the members of the upper house during the ongoing budget session.
Thanks, Kriti, and thanks to your viewers for watching this edition of Question Hour. Now, Question Hour is an essential tool of parliamentary democracy where members get the opportunity to question the government on the policy and the steps it has taken for public good. Now, broadly speaking, there are three categories of questions: start, unstart, and the short notice ones.
But how are these questions asked and how are they answered? Here's a small presentation for our viewers.
A member submits his or her questions at least 15 days before the office of Rajya Sabha chairman. The Rajya Sabha Secretariat chooses the questions to be answered through a draw of ballots. Separate ballots are held for starred and unstarred questions. The questions are scrutinized for admissibility under the current rules and precedents. Questions are disallowed if they are not in order. Advance copies of chosen questions are sent to ministry or departments concerned. The ministry concerns collect information to prepare the reply. The minister concerned replies to starred questions on the floor of the House and provides written answers to unstarred questions. Up to 160 unstarred questions are listed every day in a separate list. Well, there you saw how these questions are asked and how they make their way from the members to ministry's table. It's time to begin our show, Kriti. Well, the first question of this edition of the show that was asked by member Anil Desai from Ministry of Home Affairs. The member asked about the details in regarding Rohingya Muslim and their deportation.
And there's a detailed response given by MOS Home Affairs, Nityanand Rai. He goes on to say that as per reports, illegal Rohingya immigrants are presently staying in India, mostly in the states of Jammu and Kashmir, Telangana, Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Delhi, Rajasthan, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal, Assam, Karnataka and Kerala. Since illegal immigrants enter into the country without valid travel documents in clandestine manner, there is no accurate data regarding number of such immigrants living in the country. Detection and deportation of illegal migrants after due process of nationality verification is a continuous process. Central government has been vested with powers under Section 32E and 32C of the Foreigners Act 1946 to detain and deport foreign nationals staying illegally in the country. Under Section 5 of the Passport Entry into India Act 1920, central government may also by an order direct the removal of any person from India who enters India without the passport. These powers of the central government have also been entrusted under Article 258(1) of the Constitution of India to all the state governments since 1958. Further, under Article 2391 of the Constitution of India, the administrators of all the UTs have also been directed to discharge the functions of the central government relating to the aforesaid powers since 1958. Consolidated instructions regarding deportation or repatriation of foreign nationals have been issued to all states and union territory administrations on 24th of April 2014, also in 2019. And now let's move on to the next question, and this one has been asked by member Tiruchi Siva, and this question is to the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And the member has inquired details about dependence on new and renewable sources.
The reply to this query is given by Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy, R.K. Singh. The Minister says renewable energy, including large hydro, has a share of about 36.74% in total installed electricity generation capacity in the country. As part of its national determined contributions under the Paris Agreement on Climate Change, India has undertaken to install at least 40% of its total electrical generation capacity from non-fossil fuel sources by the year 2030. The government has taken several measures to promote renewable energy. These include permitting foreign direct investment up to 100% under the automatic rule, waiver of interstate transmission system charges and losses for interstate sale of solar and wind power for projects to be commissioned by 30th of June 2023. declaration of trajectory for renewable purchase obligation up to the year 2022, fiscal initiatives such as accelerated depreciation, goods and service tax at lower rates, concessional custom duty as well. Setting up of ultra-mega renewable energy parks to provide land and transmission on plug-and-play basis. Schemes such as Pradhan Mantri Kisan Urja Suraksha Evam Uthan Mahabhiyan, Solar Rooftop Phase 2, 12,000 megawatt CPSU scheme Phase 2. Laying off new transmission lines and creating new substation capacity under Green Energy Corridor scheme for evacuation of renewable power. Notification of standards for development of solar photovoltaic system devices, setting up of project development cell for attracting and facilitating investment, standard bidding guidelines for tariff-based competitive bidding process for procurement of power from grid-connected solar PV and wind projects. Government has issued orders that power shall be dispatched against letter of credit or advance payment to ensure timely payment by DISCOMs to RE generators.
And joining us on Sansad TV is Rajya Sabha MP Mr. Tiruchi Siva. Sir, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. So during the ongoing 253rd session of the Rajya Sabha, you'd asked the question on dependence on new and renewable energy. The government has given a detailed response. What is your take?
See, the new and renewable energy will be an indispensable one in the growing scenario of the world. And considering the global warming and the consumption of power will be increasing more and more. And so, in the interest of the eco conditions of our universe, as well as the interest of the people and other systems, it is mandatory of every government, not only this government, every government across the world, that they have to encourage new and renewable energy. And as far as India is concerned, as per the reply given to my question by the minister, 36.74% of the total electricity generation capacity in the country amounts from new and renewable energy. And as far as my state, Tamil Nadu is concerned, the wind power that is generated there is equivalent to the total power generated by way of nuclear energy all over the country, pan-India. So wind power is something that is being encouraged in my state, Tamil Nadu. And the government is now extending too many concessions and so many support to whoever comes forward to generate power by way of new and renewable energy. And I think they have got some plans even to waive the cost. That was waiver of interstate transmission system charges and losses for interstate sale of solar and wind power for projects to be commissioned by 30th June 2023. I think whether it will be retrospective also to all those who are, because since this is a written reply, we cannot ask any supplement questions. So I think as it is said that to be commissioned by 2023 means even earlier that have been commissioned will enjoy the same benefits that are being extended. And only one thing that is disturbing is, as always, that 100% FDI through direct route. Whereas I wish that when so many educated youth here in this country are looking up, they must be encouraged, creating awareness, the need and requirement of renewable energy, and they must be made entrepreneurs. And so all these facilities that are being extended to the foreign direct investors, that could be given to indigenous generators like. And that's one of our suggestions that could be. We can make use of, when we say make in India, we should also make use of the potential that is available. And India is the major country that has more youth power. And yes, people are now very much interested in the ecosystem. And we have to go for a substitute. And this is very much, and now even this 36.74% is very much encouraging. And we wish that it must increase in the days to come. But this includes even large hydro projects.
Would you also like to give some specific suggestions, sir?
That's what I said. We have to depend more upon this. We have to slowly come out of the conservative methods of generating power, which causes, which is a major source of reason for global warming. And new and renewable energy will help in every possible way, positive manner. So I think the government can think of extending some more support to those who involved in this area. And as I suggested, the youth community in this country could be utilized more in this, because they are now well aware of their responsibility, the need of the country, and what they should do. So in this respect, I think what we are doing now is, of course, appreciable, but something more could be done. It would be in the interest of not only India, as well as in the interest of the global community, people living across the globe.
All right, sir. On that note, thank you so much for joining us and speaking to us.
Well, next question of this edition of the show was asked by member Jyotiraditya Scindia from Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. The member asked if the government has maintained strategic crude oil reserves in the country.
So this response has been given by Petroleum Minister Dharmendra Pradhan. He goes on to say that Indian Strategic Petroleum Reserve Limited, a Government of India special purpose vehicle, has established strategic petroleum reserves facilities with a total capacity of 5.33 million metric tons at 3 locations, namely Visakhapatnam, Bengaluru and Padur. As per the consumption pattern of 2019-20, the total capacity is estimated to provide for about 9.5 days of crude oil requirement. In addition, oil marketing companies in the country have storage facilities for crude oil and petroleum products for 64.5 days. Thus, the current total national capacity for storage of crude oil and petroleum products currently is 74 days. Taking advantage of low crude oil prices in April-May 2020, the strategic petroleum reserves have been filled to full capacity, leading to notional savings of approximately 5,000 crore. Under phase 2 of the SPR program, the government has given in-principle approval in June 2018 for establishing 2 additional SPR facilities with total storage capacity of 6.5 MMT at 2 locations, namely Chandikhol in Odisha and Padur in Karnataka. As per the consumption pattern of 2019-20, 6.5 MMT SPR capacity is estimated to provide for about additional 12 days of India's crude oil requirement. And moving on to the next question, and this one has been asked by member Dr. Vinay P. Sahasrabudhe, and this question is to the Ministry of Steel. And the member has asked about mechanism to monitor steel imports in the country.
The reply to this question is given by Minister of Steel Dharmendra Pradhan. The Minister answers in affirmative, saying Steel Import Monitoring System, an online platform for advance registration of intended import of steel, was launched by the government through its notification on the 5th of September 2019. Steel Import Monitoring System is operational with effect from 1st of November 2019. It provides granular data on steel imports with an aim to identify the exact grade being imported into the country in order to plan domestic manufacturing, besides giving advance warning about any surge in the imports. SIMS or Steel Import Monitoring Policy was initially applicable for 284 items under Chapter 72nd, 73rd and the 86 of ITC 2017, Schedule 1 Import Policy, which has now been extended to cover all the HS codes items under Chapter 72nd, 73rd and 86, White Government's notification dated 28th of November 2020. From the inception of SIMS, there have been 1,99,886 registrations till the end of December 2020, with self-declared value of $13,621 million US. Moving on to next question that was asked by member Rajmani Patel from Ministry of Labour and Employment. The member asked about government policy and initiatives on the migrant labour, especially in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic and lockdown.
Well, there's a detailed response given by Labour and Employment Minister Santosh Kumar Gangwar. He goes on to say that in order to safeguard the interest of the migrant workers, the central government had enacted the Interstate Migrant Workmen Regulation of Employment and Conditions of Services Act 1979. This act has now been subsumed in the Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020, and the code has been notified in 2020. The above mentioned code, commonly known as OSH code, provides for decent working conditions, minimum wages, grievance redressal mechanisms, protection from abuse and exploitation, enhancement of the skills and social security to all category of organized and unorganized workers, including the migrant workers. The code is applicable to every establishment in which 10 or more interstate migrant workers are employed or were employed on any day of the preceding 12 months. The government further says that to boost employment and livelihood opportunities for migrant workers returning to villages in the wake of COVID-19 outbreak, Government of India has launched Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan. The Garib Kalyan Rozgar Abhiyan involves intensified and focused implementation of 25 target-driven works to provide employment and create infrastructure in the rural areas of 116 districts of 6 states with a resource envelope of 50,000 crore. With a total expenditure of 39,000 to 93 crore approximately, the Abhiyan has already generated 50 crore 78 lakh 68,671 man-days employment. And moving on to the next question, and this one has been asked by member K.C. Ramamurthy, and this question is to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. And the member has inquired about rental accommodation for the urban poor.
The reply to this question was given by Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs, Hardeep Singh Puri. The minister says affordable rental housing complex, a sub-scheme under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana Urban, has been launched on 31st of July 2020 for providing accommodation at affordable rent to urban migrants and poor of economically weaker section and low-income group category. The scheme will be implemented through 2 modules. Module 1 comprising utilizing existing government-funded vacant houses in cities by converting them into ARHC under public-private partnership mode by public agencies. And Model 2, incentivizing private and public entities to construct, operate and maintain ARHCs, that is affordable houses, on their own available vacant land. Private players are being encouraged to participate under both the models of the scheme. Under Model 1, state and union territory governments will select a concessionaire through request for proposal to develop existing government-funded vacant housing complex to be used at the Affordable Housing Society for a period of 25 years under repair, retrofit, develop, operate and transfer mode. In order to ensure proactive participation of industries, a dedicated and user-friendly website of the affordable housing has been prepared, which provides all related information about the scheme. Further, various communications have been made to states and union territories, mobilizing private industries to participate in the scheme. Webinar series on training and hand-holding for industries and other stakeholders have also been organized to encourage their participation. Information, education and communication campaigns through various social media platforms are also being organized for public and private entities for them to be a part of this initiative. The framework for this initiative has been prepared in the form of operational guidelines and circulated to all the states and union territories and other concerned stakeholders. The details of proposed incentives to private players who wish to develop such housing projects on their own are also mentioned in the reply. Exemption of income tax on any profit and gains derived from the operation of affordable housing on similar lines as that of affordable housing under Section 80(1)(a) of the Income Tax Act 1961. Exemption of GST on any profits and gains derived from the operations of ARHC at part with rental service of residential premises through notification number 12 of 2017 Central Tax dated 28th of June 2017. Project finance and loan at low interest through concessional window under Affordable Housing Fund by housing finance companies and priority sector lending by the commercial banks. Provision of use permission changes for house on the vacant land if needed. 50% additional floor area of the FAR floor space index free of cost. Single window approval of design, drawings and other statutory approvals within 30 days. Necessary trunk infrastructure facilities like road sanitation services, water, sewage, septage, drainage, electricity up to project site without any additional cost to the entity. Municipal services such as water supply, electricity house, property tax, Surrey Septate charges for operation of affordable housing will be levied at par with the residential projects, and additional grant in the form of Technology Innovation Grant is provisioned by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs for using innovative, sustainable, green and disaster-resilient technologies as well as building materials for the cost-effective, faster and quality construction of the affordable housing. The Technology Innovation Grant of Rs 60,000 per house, that is single bedroom, Rs 1 lakh per house, double bedroom and Rs 20,000 per dormitory bed will be provided as per the scheme guidelines. The scheme will be implemented by both public and private agencies, either by converting existing government-funded vacant complex into the affordable housing societies or by constructing, operating and maintaining the affordable societies on their own available vacant land. As per the scheme guidelines, central government agencies like CPWD and NBCC are allowed and encouraged to participate under both models. So that's it in this edition of Question Hour. Thanks for watching the show. Keep watching Sunset TV for more.
Stay healthy, stay tuned. Goodbye.